Hey everyone, Brendan Sander here. How are you? Welcome to a new series that I'm doing called Going Down the Rabbit Hole. In this case, we are going to talk about Aerosmith and some of the offshoot side projects and stuff like that. You know, you get something new and it just kicks off your, revitalized interest in that band. And then you go down the rabbit hole listening to all the little side projects, solo albums and things of that nature. That's what this show is all about. As I said, we are going to do Aerosmith here. We'll get started in that in just a bit. But before we do, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by turning on notifications, you'll stay up to date on brand new episodes just like this with Going Down the Rabbit Hole with Aerosmith. So last week, a new, sort of old Joe Perry album came out. Switzerland Manifesto Mark II, where he took the original 2018 album, which had 10 tracks, dropped 6 of the songs, added 6 new ones, took the 4 remaining songs, and either did new mixes, maybe had a different vocal take or guitar solo or something on it, but they were different. The whole thing got a new mix on it, put it back out as Switzerland Manifesto Mark II. And I have to say, this album is really good. I think it's the definitive version of the album. I had a very hard time getting into it the first go around in 2018. But hearing this sounded like a sort of long lost Joe Perry project album. And it just kicked off everything Aerosmith for me. So of course I started down the road with Aerosmith, pulling that stuff out. And I gotta say, my favorite Aerosmith album is Pump from 1989. I came into the band in the 80s, around 1987 with Permanent Vacation. I love the songs Ragdoll, Dude Looks Like a Lady, Angel. I wish they'd play that one live. But, so I pull this stuff out, rocking away with it. One of the albums, a Geffen era album that I'd never gotten into before, Done with Mirrors, because this doesn't have the sort of gloss and production that these albums do. But I pulled this one out and suddenly it clicked. So along with having this to enjoy, suddenly I felt like I had a brand new Aerosmith album that I had never really listened to a lot. So I pulled this one out. I'm enjoying this. And then that just sort of really put everything into high gear. But I think the reason I'd steered clear of this one for so long was that they redo the Joe Perry Project song, Let the Music Do the Talking. And it's not much different than the original one. So generally, if I want to hear that, I'd rather listen to Joe Perry Project, which I've always been a big fan of, over putting on this and hearing a cover version. Because I actually knew the Joe Perry Project song before I knew this one. But this was great because I now have a new love for that. And after lots of people telling me that they thought that was a great album and I just couldn't see it, now I do. But I also pulled out my Pandora's Box box set. This is a 3-disc box set. If you're not familiar with it, it's really cool. It's got a bunch of unreleased material, live stuff, some outtakes, some alternate studio editions of things on here. What I liked about it at the time when it came out, it had stuff from Joe Perry Project and Whitford Saint Holmes, the Brad Whitford side project and so forth. So that was sort of my first taste, was getting it through this. And I also have the Box of Fire, which has all the original Columbia era albums in here in jewel case editions. And of course, was pulling that out so that I could dig, through this stuff. And I went back to early era stuff, which I don't often do because I love the 80s so much. The 2 albums I was focusing on a lot, Get Your Wings and Rocks. Sorry, I just double check that for a second. But yeah, both of these albums, just really enjoying those. My usual go-to album though out of here is Draw the Line. I love this album. That was my first of the 70s era albums that I really, really loved. And to this day, I still think that's a very underrated Aerosmith album. Probably the most underrated though is this one here, Rockin' a Hard Place, that is, without either Brad Whitford or Joe Perry on that album. I think Brad Whitford plays rhythm guitar on Lightning Strikes, but I mean, he's not a member for that album. He had left during the recording sessions of it. So definitely enjoying all that stuff there. But as I said, I'm a big Joe Perry Project fan, so of course I had to pull out the albums Let the Music Do the Talking, which has the original version of the song that Aerosmith would later do on Done with Mirrors is on here. So really highly recommend these next three albums. That one, I've got the Rock and Rolls Again. So this first one here has Ralph Morman singing, who sang for Savoy Brown on an album, I know. This one here is Charlie Farron, who also had sung with Ted Nugent. And Once a Rocker, Always a Rocker, probably my favorite of all three of them, also the most different of all three of them. This one has Cowboy Mock Bell on it, and always enjoyed that. But those three albums, listen to those, digging those, pulled out the rest of the Joe Perry stuff. This one here, self-titled album, opening track, Shaking My Cage, absolutely outstanding. Every time I listen to this album gets better and better. Joe Perry does all the vocals on that one, so that was one of those ones that was a little jarring at first to get used to, but I've long since warmed up to that, and ever since then he's been doing vocals here and there with stuff. Like on the next album, Have Guitar, Will Travel. It does not do all the vocals on here. He definitely brought in someone to sing with him on stuff like this, but he still did a few of them. And then we get to Switzerland Manifesto, the 2018 album, the one that I didn't care for very much. And now, of course, we've got the new version of it, the Mark II, but this is only available on LP, so hopefully there'll be a CD edition of it eventually, but that's why I picked it up on LP there. Of course, much prefer having it on CD if I could. So Joe Perry, outside of his solo and Joe Perry project, not much else except he has done Hollywood Vampires, and this is with Alice Cooper fronting, and then we've also got Johnny Depp on guitar and stuff like that. First one's pretty cool because this one here is full of cover songs. There's one original, Raise the Dead, that's on here, My Dead Drunk Friends, and The Last Vampire, which are, you know, smaller things, but real stuff on here is all the covers, but they're interesting covers. They're not just straight ahead. One of the best ones on here is Whole Lotta Love, the Led Zeppelin tune. They do a really great reinterpretation of that on here, but just very cool. So I was checking that out, but then there is an album of mostly new original stuff called Rise from the Hollywood Vampires. There's a number of covers on here. They do David Bowie's Heroes and some other cool stuff, People Who Died. There's a track cover on here, and so nice, but I am definitely warming up to and hearing more of the Joe Perry aspect of the stuff, being in that Aerosmith mindset, whereas I wasn't a big fan of this album, and I was definitely warming up to it even more this go around. So, you know, sometimes you never know. You get an album, doesn't click with you, then when you're really in the mood for that artist, suddenly it's a lot better. But these two together, very cool. Of course, it also helped that, you know, the Joe Perry came out last Friday. Hollywood Vampires put out a live album this past Friday, so just all things Joe Perry right now. It's very cool. But if I'm going to listen to the Hollywood Vampires, which has Alice Cooper, and I'm going to listen to Pump, I don't know, for me, an album that goes hand in hand with it that I remember from back in the day, Alice Cooper's Trash. So, you know, when you're going down that rabbit hole, sometimes it's not, you know, I'm on Aerosmith, then I'm on Joe Perry, then I'm on Hollywood Vampires, and then I move off to Alice Cooper. So to me, that's sort of the real sign of going down the rabbit hole, where you can end up on an entirely different artist, you know, 6 degrees of separation kind of a thing. And that to me is a lot of fun with doing this stuff. But if we stay and we go back on the Aerosmith run of things, I mentioned Whitford Saint Holmes, Brad Whitford's side project when he was out of the band with David St. Holmes from Ted Nugent's band. They did one album together. Man, I wish they had done more at the time. There is a second one they did get back together. I think it's called Shapes, which I have an autographed copy of. Didn't pull that out. That one just does not have that same character as this one, so I didn't pull it out. It definitely sounds like a modern recording, whereas I very much love the late 70s era sound of this one. But I'm such a fan of David Saint Holmes that I pulled out Derek Saint Holmes, Saint Paradise, which was another project of his right before that. This one is out on the Wounded Bird label, which is really cool. We got Rob Grange and Denny Carmassi on here as well. But as I mentioned, he comes from singing with Ted Nugent, so I pulled out this later era Nugent self-titled album, just simply called Nugent, as opposed to Ted Nugent. And this one here was 1982, which was after this. So once Brad Whitford goes back over to Aerosmith, he goes back over to Nugent, and we have that. But again, just kind of fun moving down the line on those things there. Steven Tyler also did a solo album, albeit it's country, and surprisingly, I really do enjoy this album a lot, even though it's not the rock stuff that we all know him for. This album here is really good, and Steven sounds like Steven on it. It's just country music with fiddle and banjo and stuff like that, and acoustic guitars and whatnot. But it's very good, so I do enjoy pulling it out from time to time. And then just kind of beyond all that sort of stuff, I pulled out the You've Gotta Move live recording DVD. But the reason why is that there is a bonus CD inside this. So we've got the disc there, and then we've got a bonus CD back here of 5 tracks. It's got Fever, Rats in the Cellar, Living on the Edge, Last Child, and Same Old Song and Dance. So I love when the DVD or Blu-ray comes with a disc itself. Don't know why they never released it as a whole live recording, but that got me to buy that. And just being that it's the only way you can get it, I do enjoy pulling that out. But it's a great live concert and great live interpretations. It was done during the Honkin' on Bobo period, which is not my favorite Aerosmith. In fact, whenever I do my rankings and stuff like that, it's always in last place because I just feel it's kind of a very uninspired album. It doesn't have the character that so many of their great blues covers, like Train Kept a Rollin' and stuff, do have, that I would have expected on this album. I thought in theory it was going to make for a great album, and in the end just didn't do it for me. So, but that was my going down the rabbit hole with Aerosmith, pulling out a little bit of everything from across the board, and then ending up on some Alice Cooper and Ted Nugent in the end of the day. And at this point, because of that new live Hollywood Vampires, I'm still on it after about a week, so I thought I'd do this cool video for you guys. All right, hopefully you enjoyed this. Let me know what kind of rabbit holes you like going down, and when you're on one for Aerosmith, where do you end up? And take care. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye, everyone.